The Straw Hats find themselves caught up in a storm that came out of nowhere. Their ship knocked up into the sky, they're able to survive the ice and thunder that rains upon them before crashing down next to the island of Wofford, where a new adventure awaits. This is how One Piece Odyssey begins. The most recent RPG from Bandai Namco has been developed by ILCA for the PlayStations 4 and 5, Xbox Series S and X, and the PC. I finished the game with 35 hours of playtime while doing plenty of side content, but I still have a good checklist of things I need to do, so I wouldn't be surprised if the final hour count is closer to 50. Today we're gonna look at Odyssey's gameplay, analyze its quest design, RPG systems, graphics, everything. This is my review of One Piece Odyssey. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. Bandai Namco has sent me a code for review, and this code was for the PC version of the game, where I ran into an issue during my entire playthrough. But I wasn't able to pinpoint exactly why this issue was happening. It could be some driver or hardware incompatibility, so there's a chance that you won't run into this at all. And if you're on console, this should not be a problem. The issue? Well, my computer just reboots itself. It's caused me to lose a lot of progress during this review, and it can happen every time you start something, like a dialogue scene or a combat encounter. So it really was unavoidable for me. That said, this will not affect the review score, because even though it is a very serious issue, chances are it was a problem specific to my setup, and if it wasn't, if it's something that everyone is experiencing, there will be a fix or a driver soon. There's no way this will remain as it is right now. In any case, save often, and you should be fine. If you're a One Piece fan, this story takes place somewhere between Dressrosa and Whole Cake Island. If you're not a One Piece fan, however, I think this game does a good job of making you feel included through a few special tricks. After landing on the island of Wofford, a new original character, Lim, touches the entire crew, taking away the memories of their powers. So they simply don't remember how to use everything they've learned so far. To recover their powers, they must visit their own memories, using Lim's mysterious power. They have to relive some of their adventures and get their full strength back. So you'll visit Alabasta, Water 7, Marineford, and Dressrosa. But you won't be simply reliving the events that went down on these islands. Things are different. The crew's memories don't always match perfectly to what happened. And the Straw Hats, even though they've lost their powers, they still remember their entire journey and might try to do things differently this time around. Or you have some crewmates that didn't join until later in the show, like Robin, who witnesses Alabasta for the very first time. This is also how the game welcomes non-One Piece fans. Lim joins the Straw Hats on their adventures, and they often have to explain to her what happened. You also have these story recaps that are a bit buried in a menu, but if you didn't watch One Piece, you can get an understanding of what went down by watching these. And every time a character is introduced, they get a little character recap as well. The original story is about understanding this Wofford Island, what causes the storms, and understanding Lim's power, which does not come from a devil fruit. But the Wofford portion of the story is very small in comparison to the memories you'll be reliving. Most of the time you'll spend in this game is within the memory islands. In between memories, you'll return to Wofford to defeat a mighty colossus and free up some more of your powers so you can visit the next island. To help you on your journey, you'll have the help of Adio, another original character this game introduces in a way that immediately made me want to see him join the crew. He is so cool. The story was definitely a big factor of pushing me to finish the game. The memories feel like a love letter to One Piece while putting its own original twist on it. The Wofford Island has so many elements that One Piece fans are going to love that even without the game portion of it, this is a story worth experiencing if you're a One Piece fan. That said, this is a video game, and it wouldn't be One Piece without combat. One Piece Odyssey uses a turn-based battle system with a very unique twist. When you start an encounter, characters and enemies will be separated into different areas. They cannot move from these areas until every enemy has been defeated. So melee attacks can only be aimed at enemies in your own area. But as you'd expect, some characters have access to ranged attacks, so they can assist crewmates in a different area. The game uses a very simple Fire Emblem triangle, where each character has a type, and that type has an advantage and a disadvantage against two other types. On top of this, there are weaknesses to different attack properties. You've got the usual RPG weaknesses like the elements of fire, ice, and lightning. You have status effects like bleeding or poison, but then you also have some unique weaknesses that are very One Piece. For instance, being a male makes you weak against this particular attack from Robin. Ouch. And being a fool makes Usopp's attacks a lot more useful. And yes, Sanji cannot attack women once again. It doesn't happen too often, so don't worry. On top of that, you have bond attacks, where the Straw Hats will group up for a powerful attack. This uses a different meter that you can build up whenever you assist your crewmates, either by healing, buffing, or jumping into their area to protect them. It's a cool combat system with a lot of things to look out for, and then the encounters also feel pretty dynamic. Very often you'll have a random event that will grant you bonus XP if you complete it. It's usually something simple, like defeating a powered up enemy before they knock down your character, or defeating an enemy with a specific crewmate. But it keeps encounters unpredictable and offer you these little optional challenges that keep combat fun instead of becoming monotonous. Something that helps that combat variety is also the amount of unique enemies the game has. Looking at all these character designs was a big highlight for me. You've got a ton of boss fights too, but even the regular enemies have a lot of variety. The only complaint I would have regarding combat would be in its difficulty. Most fights are very easy, it takes a while for it to get a place where they feel challenging at all, and then the difficulty kind of stops ramping up. There was never a point where I feared losing a battle. Even when one of my characters went down, I had so many revival items that this was never an issue. I missed that epic RPG boss fight that would put me in a game over screen over and over again to force me to adapt and take better advantage of its combat systems. Maybe I was just too good of a gamer, but I wanted the game to challenge me a bit more. After you finish the game though, there are these challenge boss encounters and maybe I'll get my feel of challenge that way, but it would be nice to be challenged while completing the story too. That said, RPGs are not just about the story and combat, there's a whole other world out there to traverse and explore. So let's talk about exploration. As you explore the different areas of One Piece Odyssey, you can switch characters as you please. Usually, I explore with Luffy, as he can grapple to get to places faster, and his stretchy arm is also useful to pick up items as I go. But sometimes you'll have to switch characters. Chopper can fit in through small passages, Zoro can slice through iron boxes or obstacles, Usopp can shoot down items out of reach, and then you have Sanji, Nami, and Robin, who can see specific items that others can't. So whenever you're exploring, if you hear one of them speak, maybe switch characters and you'll find either a rare ingredient, some money, or an archaeological item. Once you unlock fast travel, the world becomes much easier to traverse, which is a good thing because some of this quest design is unnecessarily cumbersome. For instance, Alabasta is an absolutely huge place. The desert is vast, there's a lot to explore out there, but sometimes you'll cross the desert until you reach an oasis, only for the quest to tell you to go back to where you came from. And they often disable fast travel during these missions, making it extra frustrating. This backtracking design often feels like it only exists to pad out the game, and overall I wasn't a big fan whenever it happened. That's not to say that every quest is going to be like that. Most of them have you exploring a new area, and sometimes the backtracking makes sense, but others, it just feels needless. Most of these quests happen in Alabasta, which is by far the longest arc in the game. I spent about 9 hours in Alabasta out of the 35 hours of total playtime, and that's a considerable chunk considering you have 5 islands in total. Water 7 felt like a much better area to explore with much better pacing and a decent length. Marineford is very short, but that was also a welcome change of pace. It's a series of battles and cutscenes that makes it feel like a more cinematic moment. But after you're done, they even give you a little town to explore and do side quests in, which I haven't done yet because I haven't found the item I need to repair this bridge. That is post-game content for me. And then Dressrosa is similar to Water 7, which might be surprising for those of you who know how big of an arc Dressrosa is in the show, but when you arrive, the birdcage is already surrounding the city, so you're only playing the final moments of that arc. No matter where you are though, exploration comes with a few nuisances. They're small nitpicks, but they happen constantly, which makes them really annoying. For instance, some grappling points take away your camera control for a really long time, making you pause with each grapple. Every time you fast travel, you gotta watch this guy waving goodbye before you regain control of your character. And if you happen to go the wrong way, the screen will slowly fade to black before giving you control once again. Even character switching takes slightly too long and often discouraged me from switching characters more often. These issues are not uncommon to a lot of RPGs, but many of them feel like problems of the past that modern games have already solved. Odyssey also has a few puzzles, but once again, these lacking any kind of challenge. They have some very good ideas, but the solutions are obvious to the point that sometimes you solve them by accident. It just takes a while to solve them because you're stuck watching an animation happen, or you press a button and have to wait for the text to stop scrolling. There are only a handful of puzzles though, so nothing too painful, and their ability to change the environment significantly did make me feel like what I was doing had a bigger impact in the world. Still, it was a joy to explore and discover these locations. I've never seen a Water 7 that was so beautiful, an Alabasta that was so well realized, a small town in Marineford that I never thought existed, and Dressrosa recovering from the war against Doflamingo gives you a sense of scale of the incredible destruction this country suffered. And I think that looking at these environments as a One Piece fan made me often forget all of these little issues. Along with the main mission, you also have some side missions. These are usually pretty solid content, they have their own storylines with minor characters, and I've found them really fun to complete for the most part. There are also Fractured Memories, which is where you go to unlock the team attacks called Bond Arts. You'll need to complete a mission inside this Fractured Memory where more original stories are told, and you only have access to whatever characters are allowed to enter the memory. So that can be a good challenge in between story missions. And there's also bounty hunting. You can visit any tavern to accept bounties, where you can read a description of why why these individuals are wanted. And then you can hunt them down, usually in a fight against a unique enemy, and once you defeat them, you can claim their bounty after taxes. Oh my god, that's so much tax. It's just like real life. There are also a few collectibles for you to keep an eye out for. Some are these tablets that actually tell you the lore of the island in these small cutscenes. Others are a bit more straightforward. You just pick them up and get some items for it. Usually accessories, which are an important part of making your character stronger. You can equip accessories in each character's inventory. As long as the pieces fit, you can keep equipping more and more accessories. Later in the game, you can even upgrade them by fusing them, but I do wish there was a way to organize this inventory. Or at least, I wish that the game would let me sell the accessories I don't use anymore. I get that they're unique and the game doesn't want you to lose them, but that's why RPGs often have a buyback option. While exploring, accessories are one of the things that I'm usually on the lookout for, but also these memory cubes. These can be slotted into any ability to make it stronger. By the end of the game, you should have enough to cover every ability, but as you play, you're gonna have to make choices. Do you want to invest in the most expensive moves for big damage but risk running out of meter in combat? Or would you rather buff a weaker move that you can use more often? Are you specializing your character in single target damage or area damage, melee range or long range? It's a very light customization system. Cubes and accessories are the only two ways that you can customize your characters, but I think a simple system like this was necessary when you're managing 9 different characters. If it was a bit more complex, I'm sure some people would love it, but to me, it would probably become overwhelming and a bit of busy work since there are so many characters to keep in mind. You also have a very light layer of cooking and crafting. Cooking can heal you, restore your meter, revive you, or buff your characters, and crafting makes these trick balls that will usually debuff an enemy or attempt to apply a status debuff on them. You can do this at any camp or tavern, where you can also have a party, which will give you an XP boost for the next 10 battles. I think this game looks fantastic. One of the best looking anime games ever. And I didn't vibe with its art style when I first saw it, but thanks to technology and the new consoles, it's one of the few anime games that was built natively to run at 4K resolution. On the PC, you can go up to unlimited FPS, though personally that didn't do much for me. It's not that fast paced of a game, so I think frame rate is kinda secondary here. But that's just a personal opinion. I know some people go crazy over it. But then on top of looking real sharp, everything is gorgeous design-wise. I've talked about the different locations and unique enemies, but then every enemy also has unique attack animations and unique special moves that have received so much attention. And the thing is, this goes even for the weakest enemies, who you might not even see the attacks because you finish them off so quickly. Outside of battle, when it's time to tell the story, there are these big cutscenes for both action moments and highly dramatic moments, which look absolutely amazing, but even the most basic dialogue scenes have enough animation and enough camera work that makes them feel a bit more dynamic and less like a static visual novel. Most of the game is voice acted, though the only language option you have is Japanese, and the soundtrack is an absolute banger. It's what we've been playing through this entire review, and it's one I'm definitely taking a few songs from and making them regulars on my streaming playlist, which you can find my streams over on my second channel, Globku Live, link down below. With all that said, it's time to score this game, and if you're new here, we use letters for our review scores, from F, which is bad, all the way up to A, which is very good, and this is my score for One Piece Odyssey. A love letter to One Piece. That's the first thing that pops to my mind when thinking about this game, though that's a weird feeling since it was written by Oda himself. So it's like a love letter to his own work. You can definitely see the narrative comes from the original author, as it has all the elements that make a good One Piece story, and on top of that, the combat system is inventive, encounters are dynamic, and I absolutely love the design of every enemy and zone you encounter. The game's flaws are very few in my opinion, but definitely enough to keep it from achieving the highest score. It drags like hell in Alabasta, making the final 2 areas feel short by comparison, giving the whole game this feeling of being out of balance. The lack of any difficult boss fights also feels like they were scared of making a One Piece game that actually challenges the player, and I think that shows a lack of faith in the people playing the game. But overall, when I look back at Odyssey, I'll remember one of the best One Piece games ever made. I had a wonderful time, and now I'm gonna finish the rest of the side missions because I refuse to leave this world until I've seen and experienced everything it has to offer. But those are my thoughts on One Piece Odyssey. If you've played the game, make sure to let us know what you think in the comments down below. That way, if someone finds this review, they've heard what I had to say about it, but now they can read your thoughts as well. And thank you very much for watching. My name is Globku, and I'll see you next time. Bye!